This video we're going to talk about how you can refresh a row in a grid and how you can force a child grid to refresh a row in the parent grid. So you can see here we have a grid on the customer table, and then we also have linked content sections showing a grid from the invoice table. And you can see that for each row in the customer table, we're showing the linked rows in the invoice header table. So you can see here the way we did that was we went to properties and we defined a linked content definition, and you can see here that the linked content is grid invoices. And then what we've done is we've actually put a button in the toolbar over here. You can see there we've actually got two buttons, one called refresh and one called refresh grid. If we go look at the definition of that, this first button over here calls the refresh row method. So this is going to refresh the current row in the grid, and this second action basically calls the refresh method to refresh the entire grid. So obviously this is just a simple situation here. So if we go now and we run this grid, and now we go to the underlying table that this grid is based on, and I change that to say Creo Systems number 2 over there, and then I press the refresh button over here, refresh row, you can see that it refreshes over there. So that basically just demonstrates that that a grid has a refresh row method. So now basically let's talk about how an event in the child grid can force the parent grid to refresh. So I'm going to go here and make a change there. I'll change that to say Creo Systems number 3 now, and instead of pressing this button in the parent the parent grid, I'm going to press this button in the child grid here called refresh parent grid row. So let's go ahead now and press that, and in my JavaScript I happen to have that alert there. So it says we will now refresh row 1. So there we go, and there's row 1 defined. So now let's go look at how this button over here was defined. So we'll go to the invoices grid, and we'll go over there to properties, and we'll look at the action button over there, and let's look at this one, the parent row grid. And here you go. So there was our alert with a typo, and you can see that what we're doing in this JavaScript over here is the first thing that we do is we get a pointer to the parent grid. So if you go here to grid methods, you'll see that there's a method here called getParentObject. So now we have a JavaScript variable called parent grid, which now points to the parent grid. So this is the parent grid of the current grid, which in this case is the grid based on invoice header. And let's just remove the alert, and then we're just simply calling the refresh row method of the parent grid. And then of course we've also get the row number on the parent grid by doing parent grid dot underbar selected row. So this tells us what row number is the current row number in the parent grid, and then we call the parent grid's refresh row method. So let's just look at that in action again. I'll pause here and pick it up in the next video.